Yes, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jack Farmer, and I'm being joined by Andy Rossi, and this is the Evolution of Movies show. Of course, we talk all about movies, but Andy, you know what we've been doing this year so far, this season?
What have we been doing?
We've been having guests on.
Oh, we have. That's right, yeah.
We're going to keep that tradition alive as we bring on our special guest, someone I'm very excited to have on the show. She's someone that is writing, directing, and acting in her own films, as well as being one of the standout stars of a movie you and I both love called Dead Body. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, please join, round of applause wherever you're sitting, I guess, for Natalie Canizares as she comes on. Natalie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Great.
I'm good. I'm so glad you're on the show. Now, you are writing and directing and acting in some stuff of your own, but I want to real quick before we get in the movie and all the other stuff, you were in a movie called Dead Body. We both were. We didn't share any scenes together because I only had one scene for a total of like 1 second. But
memorable second, though.
Yeah, but you were one of the standout people in Dead Body in the movie that I think we'll hopefully be able to release to the world soon. But thanks for being on the show, and thanks for bringing your expertise as an actress.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, Dead Body, great movie. Everyone should see it as soon as it's available. See it. Tell everyone to see it.
There we go.
But
and I'm wearing this hat just for Natalie. We're both Chicago people, so I'm rocking my Chicago Sox hat today.
We are Chicago people. And though I was raised on the north side, I always preferred the Sox aesthetically because I don't watch sports.
Controversial.
But I just liked the Sox better. Yeah.
Yeah. Better
Very
colors.
Controversial. Also, Cubans tend to like the White Sox, so
there's
there's
like 5 players that are Cuban on the Sox right now.
Exactly.
So there you go.
Yeah.
We'll take you any way we can.
Well, yeah. Andy, now Andy, he starred, wrote, and directed in Dead Body, the movie we're talking about. We had just referenced, but Natalie, you're also doing some writing, directing, and acting in a movie that is currently being shopped as well.
Yeah, so I'm an actress. That's what I do. That's what I put all my time into. But I also have always wanted to create my own work. And so I'm at Playhouse West. That's where I train. I love it there. It's a Meisner studio, and they have a film festival. So I was like, okay, this is perfect. It's like a deadline thing. So I forced myself to do it, and I wrote my short. We shot it. We're actually in post now, and I'm like, wow, this is good.
Nice.
I was so scared. It was a lot of work, Andy. I was like, me and Jeff were both like, how did Andy do it? Because Jeff did cinematography, and he helped me so much with my husband. We were like, how did Andy make a feature film? Because this movie is 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and it's like, it was so much work. It's still so much work.
Yeah, I think mine's ignorance because I didn't realize how this will be fun. Shooting the movie is very fun. The post is horrible. I'm just finishing like kind of the end of my post kind of stuff now.
Wild.
Well, that's what's great about having both of you on is, see, I just watch shows and movies and I'm like, I like it. I don't like it. But you guys actually know what it takes to put it together. So that's why I like having people like you on the show, is that why I'm like, I don't like this. You guys can say, well, Jack, this is why it's like that. And I go, but let's talk about this movie. Also, real quick, I should say, for people who maybe watch you on the show right now, they may be seeing you on TV as we speak with a little spot in a commercial for El Pollo Loco, by the way, one of my favorite restaurants. So
yeah.
keep an eye out
well,
for
you
that.
should try their new Dos Locos salad, because that's what I'm advertising, you know?
I hope you get a commission for that, by the way.
I mean, I get residuals, and there's that.
Residuals, even better.
Yeah. I'm also in an AT&T commercial right now with Lily herself, the AT&T girl.
Oh, nice.
The
Spot
Lily.
Me. The Lily. Yeah.
Next will be Flo.
Well,
wow, that'd be
dream
great.
big.
Flo's killing it, man. She's been Flo for so long.
She Yeah, she's one of the icons of commercial acting. But let's talk about this movie. Let's talk about this show, I should say. And this is the Evolution of Movies show. And what this show is, if you're new to the show, is we watch a movie and then we chat about it book club style. But we call it the Evolution of Movies because we always pick a movie that came out 1 year after the last movie we talked about. So we started in 1980, went to 1981, 82, and now, guys, get those slap bracelets and windbreaker jackets out because we are in the 90s, 1990, a time when movie theaters had hits like Goodfellas, Misery, and, of course, Lionheart. But we aren't talking about any of those. We're talking about Pretty Woman, a movie IMDb describes as a man in a legal but hurtful business needs an escort for some social events and hires a beautiful prostitute he meets, only to fall in love. I have a confession to make. I had never seen this movie before.
Wow.
Are you kidding me?
So, yeah, I'd never seen it until I watched it. So I was very eager to see it. Natalie, I'm going to give you the last word on the overall thoughts. But first, I want Andy. Can you guess the Rotten Tomatoes score?
Oh, man. This has been really, I'm so bad at this. So 1990, you said it was Goodfellas came out this year.
Goodfellas, Misery, and Lionheart, the first movie we ever reviewed, by the way.
I think Dances with Wolves maybe was this year too. So it had a lot of tough competition. I'll go Pretty Woman, 68.
68. So Natalie, before you give your response of your thoughts on this, do you think that it's lower or higher than 68%?
I think it has to be higher.
Yeah, higher. Now I think it's. Can I change my answer? Oh shoot! I was going to change my answer.
Pretty Woman, one of the most iconic movies ever,
sat right at the 65% mark. Put it at the lower end, somewhere near the middle, but somewhat the lower end of the review so far.
It's all relative. Like this whole season, if anybody's listened to some of our other episodes, it's ridiculous. Flash Gordon is a monstrosity of a movie and got like a 78 or something ridiculous. So
that's crazy.
So it's always hard to guess, but you almost nailed it. Now, Natalie, I want to get your thoughts here. Had you seen Pretty Woman before? I'm guessing yes, but what were your thoughts going into it this time around?
What were my thoughts going into it this time around? Pretty Woman was a very formative movie for me. I saw it very young, and it kind of like formed my opinions on what it is to be a woman, which is kind of messed up. But so this time around, it's hard to like unmesh that. You know, I'm like, oh, Pretty Woman. I've seen it so many times, but I noticed more the filmmaking this time because I hadn't really thought about the filmmaking. I kind of just would watch it throughout the years because it was like a movie that I loved and felt nostalgic for. But I noticed, the first scene we see is George Costanza. What's his real name?
I call him, spoiler alert, George Costanza throughout this entire movie is what I will refer to him as Costanza. Just like
it's easier. So it's like I'm like, wow, that's interesting that it opens on him and that we open at this part. Really, it opens on that money magic trick. And it's like, what I was like, really, what is the theme of this film? Because I hadn't really thought of it as a filmmaker. Some movies I watch and they kind of get you in filmmaker mode immediately, but this movie hadn't done that to me before. So yeah, this time watching it, I was like looking for what the actual director was trying to say.
I'm going to be interested to hear your thoughts as we go through it as well, because I definitely had my thoughts again coming in later. But before we start breaking down the movie and getting into it step by step, I always like to take a second to say thank you to everyone who's listening to the show or watching the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, 5-star review. Leave a nice little comment in your 5-star review too. I like to open that up and it just makes me feel good. I'm like, hey, that was a nice thing for them to say. So do it. Leave me a 5-star review.
Or else.
So let's talk about this movie. We start as George Costanza is doing bank-based magic tricks before working the room while Richard Gere is getting chewed out by his girlfriend. So he asks his ex if she knows his assistant very well before heading out in George's car as we get the poetic melodies of Go West, reminding us that they're the kings of wishful thinking. Natalie, this is just a very quick spot of the movie, very beginning, but it does give us a little tease into the characters and the world we live in. Tell us a little bit about what the filmmaker is telling us about this world and the characters just right here off the top.
Well, I think it immediately is setting up so much for, to later be paid off. One, that George Costanza's character is not a nice man.
A douche. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. A douche. That class and money are big themes in this film. And then Richard Gere's problem is kind of established, which is that he is not able to connect. Like, he's not able to hold on to relationships. He is too invested in his work to maintain a personal life and a balance, and also that he's like wildly desirable, because that like that interaction between him and his ex is so, I was like, this is so unrealistic.
Yeah.
If I were married like I am, and I saw an ex of mine and he like kissed me on the cheek, and I'd be like, I couldn't wait for you. I'm like, imagine how that would mean I wasn't in love with my husband, and my poor, like, that is wow. I mean, he just must be some kind of Casanova or something. But I think that we are really setting up that he is high status, attractive, everyone wants him, and yet he struggles to maintain relationships because he's so invested in his work. And I also feel like we're setting up that he's just not happy.
It's interesting because, to that point, something I noticed here, and Andy, I'll let you kind of take it from here, but something I noticed is, even though he is essentially kind of he works for he does as the synopsis says, a bad business, a hurtful business. He's a money guy. He doesn't treat his girlfriend right, but they're framing this in a way that makes him sympathetic, where the girlfriend is yelling at him, not the other way around, and he's leaving the party. And Andy, I want to talk to you as a filmmaker, the ability of taking this person that on paper should be very unlikable, but framing it so that he's a likable character.
Yeah, I think they try to do it even with him not knowing how to work the expensive car. It's like he can't figure that out. So you're kind of like, oh, he doesn't do everything right. And one thing I did notice I thought was interesting, Hollywood Boulevard kind of looks the same. Like, it's still kind of dirty and grimy, but I don't think nowadays we have hookers just like hanging out, just hanging out on Hollywood Boulevard, just willy-nilly. But I was surprised to be like, wow, it hasn't really changed much.
I noticed that. I had it in my notes, like, we should talk about how different it is from 1990 to today. But then I was like, it doesn't really look
pretty
like
similar. Yeah. I was just like, oh yeah, I know that place. Oh yeah, that place. Okay.
Yeah, not a lot has changed in Hollywood since then. But we continue on, and a streetwalker sneaks out of her own apartment and heads to Hollywood. She finds her roommate, and all the rent money is gone. But fortunately, Richard Gere needs directions to Beverly Hills. Vivian, as she introduces herself, starts teaching Gere how to drive, and the duo start talking about who they are and business and all that kind of stuff. She gets him where he's going, and he wishes her goodbye before asking again about that $100 per hour thing. He hires her. She makes a scene all the way up to the penthouse, and Gere admits he's scared of heights, which will come back later. He finally pays Vivian, and he just wants to talk. And Gere's talking about his ex-wife and ex-girlfriend, and she's in a hurry for some reason. So he pays her a whopping $300 for the night, and she's going to stay over. He confuses some floss for drugs, and they surprise each other before watching some I Love Lucy. Eventually, Vivian starts taking off her clothes, and I have to ask Andy to walk us through this sex scene.
I knew you were going to do that. Wow. I mean, that's her occupation. And it's funny, like seeing how likable Julia Roberts is in this movie. Like, I had seen this before. It's been a minute. Like, I have a sister, so I think I had to watch Pretty Woman, but it has been a long time. And it was kind of like, to think of this movie on paper, you're like, oh yeah, this rich guy, pays a prostitute. It's kind of dark when you think about it. But man, Julia Roberts, I'll mention it probably a lot in the show. She's so good. Like, she's just so likable as a prostitute. And not great with math though, with $100 an hour and then just 300 for the night. Did anybody else catch that? That seemed she should ask.
Yeah.
Well, to your point, I was going to ask, like, maybe the reason I think she's not very good at her job because she's getting paid by the hour, yet she's like, let's hurry this up. Like, wouldn't you say, no, let's drag this out. Let's see if I can use up as much time as possible. I mean, maybe that's why she's broke. She just needs to understand, take your time, make as much money as you can, right?
Well,
I
I
mean,
think
maybe
she's
you should teach lessons, to people out there doing sex work.
That's but this is so silly. But Natalie, I want to talk to you about there's a very brief scene in here where Richard Gere thinks that she's about to do drugs, but really she's just flossing her teeth. And at the time I was like, that seems so weird. Why are they making this big deal about flossing teeth? But as I'm watching, I think, and I'll let you speak on this, is it feels like they're trying to show us that she's not just what you would think as the classic prostitute, where she's doing drugs and a total wreck. She actually is taking care of herself.
Yeah, I I think that this movie is a lot about people not being like, don't judge a book by its cover.
Mhm.
And I think that, you know, that scene is really important to the film and to the overall message. Because yeah, I guess you have your stereotypes about a sex worker or a prostitute, and you think, oh, she's going to be like, doing coke in the bathroom or whatever. And I think there's two things that happen there. It's he has his perception of what he assumes of her, and then also she has her experience of what it feels like to be perceived that way. And she's not a textbook, you know,
Mhm.
prostitute or sex worker. Like that's not she's not. She's a more complex person like
Mhm.
we all are really. And he just like he isn't, like we set up earlier, like, oh, he can't really drive stick, and he's bad, but he's not bad in that way. It's like everyone there's gray and nuance. And I think like a big thing is that she doesn't really fit into the world that she's put herself in, which, in things that also happened in that last chunk that you went through, like you find out one of the other prostitutes got murdered, and
Mhm.
she's like
Mhm.
living in this very dark world, and she's like trying to pull her and her friend out of it. And her friend's like, where are we gonna go? And it's like she has this vision to go somewhere. She wants to go somewhere. She sees other than this world. So I think the floss is just so symbolic of who she actually is
Mhm.
versus who she is being perceived as. And this film, as we go through it, like it's so much about people's perceptions of her. Even when she goes through the hotel, and she says, oh, I have a run in my stockings. Just kidding, I'm not wearing any. And she's like
Yeah.
messing with people because she knows how she's being seen.
Mhm.
And she has this like she's funny, and she is so likable. Julia Roberts is such a likable, warm actress. So talented. And so she can deflect with humor, but I think in that moment she feels really hurt because she realizes like, wow, he actually thinks I'm a piece of shit, you know?
Mhm.
And I think it's the first time she really surprises him. Although she surprises him a bit in the car here and there. I think she really like it catches him off guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, her stuff in the car with him is really great too, because she does the
Yeah.
line, "I ain't lost," where he's
Yeah.
like trying to get directions. I thought that was great, and then her
I can
driving
do
the
anything I
car
want,
is
honey.
cool.
I ain't lost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was a great line. And I gotta shout out Hank Azaria as a
Yes.
quick cameo when, like Natalie said, they're like investigating the hooker murder. He's
Oh
there, but
yeah.
then we never
Yeah.
see him again.
That was so to pull back the curtain, I typically will just blindly write a bunch of stuff as I'm watching the show, and then I try to
Mm.
frame it together to put my notes together. And I wrote a bunch on Hank Azaria because I thought that was going to be a key part of the movie because I hadn't
Uh,
seen it before. I was like, well, Hank Azaria is the detective. Clearly, this is going to be a big character, and the
Never
murder is
seen
going
him
to
again.
unfold. And he never came back.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was like, oh, I could probably just delete this out. But
But George sticks around, but not
yeah,
Hank Azaria.
but I
but
do think that moment is really important to the film because the I think the dead body and the lack of care for it. I mean, he cares, but like everyone else is kind of unfazed, and people are
mhm.
taking photos
Taking
of it.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that really points to this like these are people that society feels are discardable, totally unimportant. It's a lot about class, and I think that moment kind of, yeah, it kind of clues us into what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're not seeing them as actual people. And
Exactly.
I think Julia Roberts, to her credit here, I was blown away because, of course, I looked, I look her up, and I'm like, how old was she in this? She was only 23 years old when she
Yeah.
did this, but she already had such a presence and such she's such a force on screen, and the way she was actually emoting all this stuff, I was actually blown away because I was like, geez, I could never. I look back to when I was 23, and I was like, I couldn't have that kind of
No
attitude.
way.
I mean,
Yeah,
Yes.
she's so likable too, and like her watching I Love Lucy and just
Oh,
like
yes.
cracking up, and her getting in the elevator. I love the guy that plays in the elevator. He looks like
Me
Kenneth from
too.
30 Rock.
yes.
Yeah.
I could have used more of him.
He's
Yeah,
a great, but he like comes back, but he's just such a great, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, he's a
yeah.
steady part in that film that I love.
Yeah.
So yeah, the next day, Richard Gere is showering, and when he walks out, he realizes that Vivian's not a blonde. Before that, before going back to his stack of faxes, the next day he's up and at him, and he doesn't want Vivian to leave, so he buys her everything on the menu and says he buys companies for a living and sells them for more than he paid for them. Vivian doesn't seem to understand buying a company, fixing it up, and selling it for more money, even though she literally just said she grew up around guys who fixed up cars and sold them for more just the night before. George Costanza recommends Gere take a date to some big shindig, and Gere decides to just pay Vivian $3,000 to do it. They get flirty before she leaves. Natalie, this little chunk is where the real plot starts. Richard Gere, you need to bring a date. Gere doesn't have a date, so he says, let's make this about business. I'll just pay you to do it.
Yeah, I think it's the beginning of the meaty part of this story. I think that, back to your point about the business thing, I think the car, I'm gonna disagree with you. I think the people fixing up cars, making them better and selling them is different from what he does, which is, I feel like it's so thematic. It's like he buys a business, he breaks it up, and then he sells it in little pieces. It's like the antithesis to creation. I think that's the point, is that he has this like, it's a destruction business basically, which I feel like fixing up a car and selling it is it's creative, it's creation, it's fixing, selling, but buying and breaking apart. And I feel like that, like, so important to his like character and his flaw and what he's working through in the movie. But yeah, this part is, again, it's like so much about perception, right? Like, he's shocked to see her red hair. It's better, she's different, and now we're really seeing her more as a real person. She sits on the table in that scene when he
Love
has,
that. Yeah.
and it's like,
The
yeah, it's
pancakes.
like yeah, exactly. And he's like, there's chairs everywhere, and it's like, it's that, like, it's like she doesn't quite fit in this world, although she doesn't fit in her other world. And it feels like it's talking about class, but also just like her personality and her quirks. I think in this chunk of the movie, we also hear him say that the car, what's that line, like, turns like it's on rails or something. Um,
Yeah, he said,
to George on the phone.
why did he say that? He did say that. I'm trying to remember
Because
why
she
he
said
said it.
it, and so
Oh yeah,
she
she
said it
copied
when
Oh,
she
he
was
copied her.
driving,
Yeah, yeah.
and that means he's like, he's taking her and he's liking her. He thinks she's
Mhm.
cool, and he's using that line. So I think we're starting to see that like an actual chemistry and crush is forming between them. Um, and yeah, and then that exchange happens. It's business. He needs someone. She's there for her. That amount of money is just inconceivable. For him, it's like, probably to her, $15, and it's just, again, just two different people, two different worlds, two different perceptions of something. And that bathtub scene is so iconic when she's singing Prince, and like,
Yeah.
she sinks under the water. It's so cute. She's just so like alive and
Yeah.
like joyful, and yeah.
I love how bad the singing is too. Like I could like
Yeah.
identify with that. I'm like, that's how I sing.
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
I have to give my wife credit for this because we watched it last night together, and she mentioned when she's sitting on the table and like eating the pancake, she's like the Little Mermaid. It just like reminded me of
Yeah.
like Ariel with like red hair and this kind of not understanding, where to
That is
sit.
so true.
Don't
It
sit in a
kind of like,
chair.
yeah, a fish out of water kind of. Like
Yeah.
she's just like this beautiful creature that hasn't had the opportunity to live with the finer things yet, and she's just kind of like,
Yeah.
"How do I person here?"
Yeah. She definitely looked the part too she looked exactly like a Little Mermaid. She'd be a perfect spot. When did the Little Mermaid come out? 92? So maybe I wonder if there was a reference there. I could be wrong on that date. That just feels like 92 is the
It
right
was around
year.
there, yeah.
But Andy, I want to ask you something about this, and this is kind of a darker perspective, but now they had talked previously about how they don't kiss on the mouth. And I think that's because they're trying to show that they keep business separate from personal, and kissing on the mouth is a little too personal. But then as I'm watching this, Richard Gere is saying, I do business I use business to break things apart and sell it for more and whatnot. Yet as he is getting into a business relationship with someone where he's essentially buying this person for a week, I thought this was going to be a bit of a foreshadowing of something darker. Do you think that was supposed to be implied, or did I dig a little too deep into that?
I mean, I never thought of that. I don't know if Natalie has any opinion on that, but this is the one thing like that I'm kind of feeling the same about throughout this movie is I feel like Julia Roberts is so like fun and like interesting to watch. I thought Richard Gere just in general is just so boring, and I was just wondering like why she was like even that into him. Like I was like, where's this guy gonna have a little personality? So I don't know.
Wow.
And it is my bullet point to bring that up after the next chunk of stuff I was going to talk about. Yeah, Richard Gere was kind of boring. I was kind of like, everything he does, even when they have like their sex scenes, it's always just him kind of like leaning back while she does the work, and like everything he does, he's always just kind of like, okay, I guess we're doing that. I don't know, maybe I'm missing it, but I didn't see the I'm with you, Andy.
That's
He
funny.
seemed kind of boring.
I don't I guess I've never thought he was boring in this. I find him attractive,
That I
and I
agree
feel
with.
like I feel like
Yes.
I feel like his performance is not boring in my opinion as an
No.
actor. And then I feel like his character is kind of person who kind of just lets things happen. Like he hasn't really taken action in his life. He kind of just happened into this business. He kind of just happens into doing what he's supposed to do. And that's kind of part of the point of it, because then later he takes charge, and I feel like then he comes more alive. But
Yeah,
I,
it
I
takes a
don't know.
while though, I feel like, for him to get loosened up a bit.
Yeah,
I
I don't know.
I do want to say I mean the character. I don't mean the
The
Richard
character.
Gere
Yeah,
or
yeah,
his portrayal. I'm not like that's not shot at Richard Gere. It was more just like it was more like
That's an Edward.
what
Edward
do
was
you
boring.
like? What is cool about Edward without mentioning business or money?
honestly, just his looks.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
He could play the piano.
He could play the piano. I think he has like he seems to have like Edward feels like he has kind of like a tender soul in there, like he's caring, but it's not really super out there yet.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I think why would Julia Roberts be into that, or like her character? What's her name in the film?
Vivian.
Vivian. Yeah. Why would Vivian be into that? Because like he's a handsome man with money that's like high class, and that's giving her the time of day in some way. But I don't know. I want to go back to the point. What was the thing about oh, you asked Jack about if I think that the business and breaking apart has something to do with how her and that their interchange. I kind of think yes. I think he looks at her like a thing and doesn't really see her as a quite as a person. And uh I think he thinks he can just use her like a thing. And I think that's how this begins.
So we'll talk more about it because obviously it continues on, and we get to the next part of the movie where wild women do, and they don't regret it, but it does lead to Vivian getting kicked out of a store and also almost out of the hotel. After dressing down Vivian for being underdressed, the manager addresses the dress store owner and gets Vivian dressed to the nines. Meanwhile, at business headquarters, the company Gere's trying to buy got a big military contract, so that means it's going to be more expensive. Vivian then gets a crash course in elegant dining etiquette, so she knows how to use her dingle hopper. They go to their fancy dinner, and her training was pointless because it didn't she still didn't seem to know what to do, but she charms her way through it. And even when she fires off some escargot and it gets caught, people just love her. The negotiation to buy the company continues poorly, and everyone storms off before Gere says, when it comes to business, he doesn't make it personal. So to blow off some steam, Gere is playing a piano and kicks everyone out of the bar so he can have some privacy in this very public place. Andy, walk us through the sex scene.
I knew it. Yeah, I mean, he's playing piano. He's being charming. Now, this one I get. You know, he's playing the piano. He gets everybody out of there. It's, it's kind of a romantic move. I thought it was funny to have like the keys hit every now and then.
Yeah, no, look, all just full disclosure. Someone clears out a room for me, I'm swooning.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Yeah,
it's powerful. It's like a power move.
But this is where we get the I guess, and we'll talk about the most famous part of the movie in a little bit, but this is just the precursor to that, and that is Vivian going to the store and them kicking her out, Natalie. And this is again another high class group of people saying you don't belong here.
Yeah, that's an iconic moment leading up to the most iconic moment of the film. She thinks that having money is the solution, is the answer, and I think that's really interesting because it's like she's like, wow, I have money, I can go to nice stores, and she doesn't realize that it's not just about the money. Like, money doesn't make people accept you. And I feel like that's like a rude awakening for her. And that section, that moment is so, it's illuminating.
So sad for her there. That part makes me so sad. I knew it was coming too. They're so mean. They're so mean to her. I feel like, I don't know. I've definitely had some sort of feeling like that, moving out here, because people are just rude, if you're in like not in the right neighborhood or not, whatever, but never like that. I mean, that was just, I felt her little sad face on the way out, but I knew she was going to get her, she's going to come back at him. So,
she's going to get like one of the lines of the decade in a little bit, but and Natalie, I want to kind of continue on with the hotel manager. I don't know about you, but when he first started talking to her, I was like, oh, this is going to be one of the bad guys. I got the bad guy wrong like 5 times throughout this movie. I was like, it's the Hank Azaria killer. I was like, now it's going to be the hotel manager. He's the villain in this
was
movie.
Costanza all along.
It was, but I thought he was going to be a jerk, but he eventually becomes one of the more endearing people throughout this movie.
Because they're the same, right? Like, that's what that is. It's like, I'm the help, you're the help. He sees that in her. And even though he's the high class help and he's not selling his body, which has the connotations that society puts on it, they're the same. And he knows that. And that's what that's about. It's like, to me, that's what that is. But he's such a wonderful guy. Yeah. At first he's like, come with me. And he's like in the office and and then he's like, okay, I'm going to help you. And he does become, I mean, he basically is like the hand that reaches and like pulls her from where she is and teaches her how to exist in this world.
I didn't think about what you just said, but it makes sense too, because later Richard Gere kind of passes him off like
exactly.
He's not very nice
right,
to
and
him.
we think watching it if you're watching it in the beginning or for the first time, you're like, oh, he's the high class world, he's the other world, and he's taking her in. But the reality is he works for those people. Like, he probably lives in an apartment. He's not a millionaire, people don't care about him, but you don't see that really later until I don't think the audience is meant to realize that until he's like totally ignored.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I love about doing this show is stuff like that, because I didn't even put that together until now you say that, and he just because he looks the part, he's kind of an imposter in the high class world, and he probably can see an imposter when knows one when he sees one, and 100%. That's maybe why he's so helpful to her. But you just assume if you're there, you're high class. But you're right, he's not. He probably does have just an apartment somewhere or something like that, and
he's definitely not a millionaire working that job,
Right.
And it was sweet him taking the time to teach her dinner etiquette, and that dinner scene is great. And all I could say during that whole thing, I was like, man, rich people food looks disgusting. All the stuff they kept bringing out, I'm like,
it's really gross. The ice cream looks good though.
And
I'm like, I would love to.
She was all in on that.
It was really well done too. The teaching her where he was like, yeah, it's easy. 4 prongs for dinner sometimes, and most of the time 3 prongs for that. And you're like, I have no idea what you're trying to say. But this is again, when we get to that business scene for the dinner, just how good. I was in awe of Julia Roberts, by the way, this whole movie, because I mean, I've always known she's good, but I think maybe because of like, as I was younger when she started. So by the time I really started to appreciate this kind of stuff, I was like, of course she's great. But now understand she was only 23 and realizing that even as she's being a complete fish out of water, as we said, at that business dinner, she's just so charming and so lovable.
Slippery little suckers, she says.
Yeah. And as she's messing up, you're still like if that was someone else, you'd be like, oh, why do they even bring this person? But in there, you're like, she is so lovable. I think her performance was incredible. I don't know
so
if anyone
adorable
on that.
Yeah, she's endearing. She's adorable. She's so likable. I mean, how could anyone be? I think that's also like playing, like, yeah, when the later moment happens, it's like, how could anyone treat her poorly? She's so sweet.
And I was thinking during this too, her and we gotta give her fellow prostitute a little shout out. Her friend is great, Kit.
Oh, she's so good. Yeah,
she's so
Kit
good at it too. But they're so good, and like,
yeah.
I don't know if this is true, but I was watching it going like, if I were, younger, a female, perhaps, would I say I want to grow up to be a prostitute? Like, it made it like they were so nice and they had such a great friendship, and like, I don't know, it seemed like a pretty decent time. Like, it was really odd to think about.
I want to say to that point that I had an older cousin who was like my older sister growing up, who was so cool to me. So she showed me Pretty Woman when I was really young. And I like a lot of my ideas of like what it means to be a woman came from this movie in a bad way. Like where I was like, I guess I have to act like I don't know, like there's a lot of stuff about Julia Roberts, like as I would came into my own at like 12, 13, I'd be like, I guess this is how I act. And like I would like copy her and thought like like all of it. I would like copy her.
So funny.
I think like that's how pretty girls act. So yeah, like I can't, I wish I had specific examples because they're leaving me. They're in my head usually, but like yes, I think it actually did influence me. I wasn't like, oh, I want to sell my body, but I was like, I want to be like her as a woman. And then I got older and I was like, wait, I don't think this was the best like role model for me.
That's what I was thinking, because I remember like as a kid, my sister or like, girls I knew would watch this movie. So I knew like all like the specific parts, like the part we're about to get to. But I didn't really like, as an adult, I never like thought about it. Like, oh, she's a prostitute, but she's just so darn likable that I don't know. But it kind of makes it look like, oh, this is a pretty fun profession, aside from the dead body in the beginning, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So as we continue on, wake up, time to shop. And now I get why girls like Richard Gere so much. Waking him up to that. But he drags Vivian down to the stores and we get a Pretty Woman montage as Rich and Viv shop. The business deal is falling apart and we get the famous scene from the movie, which we'll get to in a second again. But as the story continues, Gere tells us that he's always liked building blocks because he always wanted to build something. So he draws a bath for Vivian and himself before going to watch polo, where Vivian implies that Gere's coworkers are worse than prostitutes. Gere tells Costanza that Vivian is a prostitute, and Costanza laughs and immediately tells Vivian, and it doesn't go well. She's about to leave Gere over the whole thing, but they're in love. So, like most couples after a fight, they have sex and then talk about it afterwards. Primarily, Vivian tells the story about how she got into her line of work. Natalie, I know you know the scene. I know you know the big "do you remember me" scene. I want to hear you deliver your I want to hear you do your Julia Roberts of this scene. The "you work" commission, right?
Yeah. Big mistake. Big. Huge. I mean, yeah. That's the lot. I've tried to Pretty Woman places myself before, actually. And then one time I tried to do it and I reversed Pretty Woman to place and I was like, shit, I meant to do it the other way. But this like furniture store in North Hollywood, was like really rude to me and my husband. We couldn't afford to shop there. But like then we finally could, and then we went and we were like, we're gonna buy the best thing there. And then we
We're
did, and we
gonna
were like,
buy this
huh, we
building.
Pretty Woman them. And then we were like, wait, no, we're supposed to not spend our money there. We were
Yeah.
supposed to just tell
Yeah,
them we could, and then
Yeah, you bring the
damn it.
stuff.
And yeah,
You
we
buy
have
their
that
place
dresser.
and then you fire
Yeah.
everyone.
Right. Yeah, I did it wrong. But
So yeah, Natalie, tell me about this scene and you watching it, whether it be the first time, this time, because this is a very empowering, very cool scene.
yeah, she walks in there. She is she's like got her bags, she's got all her money, she's all in her new world, and she is unrecognizable to them because now she looks like she belongs. And she walks in and they're like, hi, and she's like, oh, do you remember me? They don't, because they don't really see her, they don't really see people, they see ideas of people. And then she goes, I was the girl that you didn't serve yesterday. Yeah, you work on commission, right? Big mistake, big, huge. And it's just
Holding the
her.
bags up.
Yeah, it's her. Yeah, that's her way of just like, sticking it to them. And I love the lesson that it's just like, don't judge a book by its cover. You never know.
Yeah.
You never know who has what and who is what.
And I
It's a
could be
great thing.
wrong. I'm not a fashion person. Fashion person.
You're not a fashion person.
But 1990, I always think of Full House. That's like the fashion I think of. They didn't have the greatest fashions in sitcom 90s. I could be wrong, but I felt like all her clothes were still pretty cool. Am I wrong, or were they dated? They it looked like she
Julia
was like,
Roberts.
yeah, seemed like she
Oh
was
yeah,
like
I mean, it's
styled
all
really
back
well.
in style now too. So
Yeah, like I didn't
yeah,
look at that going like, that's so 90s. Like I was like,
yeah,
that looks good.
very
Well, there was the one
classy.
scene where she was wearing like the shorts and the blazer. I don't know if that one aged very well, but that's the
I
only one.
love that outfit. I would wear that right now.
Jack and I
What do you
talking
know
about
about
style.
fashion? Are you guys fashion boys?
Clearly not enough.
That's very in style. We're back at the 90s 100% right now. So.
But so
You're like, I don't think that one worked. It's like, oh, that's the #1 selling outfit this year.
Yeah,
Oh,
honestly, that is
mhm,
literally in style.
mhm.
Yeah.
so I do want to talk about Andy. Now, Richard Gere tells George Costanza about Vivian, and I'm defensive of Richard Gere here because Costanza's his lawyer. So if he is working with someone who has an illegal profession at the time, then he probably should be telling his lawyer. But his lawyer, not a very good lawyer, immediately within 5 seconds, like runs over to Vivian
God.
and is like, want to hear a secret?
It was so weird to see George Costanza as this guy too, because you're like, you're so used to him being George. So
Right.
the whole time I was just like, what are you doing, George?
Mhm.
This creepy. I don't know. But he said like a funny joke before. They said, where'd you meet her? And he said 976 babe. I thought that was funny. He should have just kept that joke going when George kept pestering him, be like, "Oh, it was 976 babe," and then just walk away or something. I don't know. I don't think he had to say it.
It was very weird how he was the one that pushed for Richard Gere to get someone to take as a date. And then when he did, he was suddenly very upset about the fact that he got someone as a date.
That's true.
It seemed like a weird switch. I also don't understand why he needed a date. I mean, obviously the movie wouldn't work without it, but it wasn't like he was meeting other couples throughout this whole thing. It was just, she was there. It worked. It just,
Optics. I think to make him warmer seeming to like the guy he's trying to buy the company from. Like it makes him seem like more of a person and less of a businessman.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. It makes sense. And it also goes to, as we're getting through this part of the movie, it's something you alluded to that I think was great. This is where Gere is saying he likes building blocks because he likes building things, which is the exact opposite of what he typically does, Natalie. So this is kind of where you're justified in what you were saying earlier. He wants to build. He doesn't want to break things apart.
Yeah. It's very character revealing, and I feel like he's just living out of alignment with who he really is, and that's him kind of coming out, in that moment. He wants to create. Yeah, he doesn't want to be a destroyer, and I think it's very important and character revealing. Yeah.
But this part is where Vivian dresses up like Jessica Rabbit to go on a date. And everyone working at the hotel is taken aback yet again by her appearance. They fly to San Francisco and catch an opera. And even though I appreciate it, it's not a part of my soul. Vivian loves it though, and she tears up. Afterwards, Vivian recommends Gere take a day off, and he says he never stops working, even though he was literally on a date up the coast and has been hanging around with her for a week. But oh well, he does take the day, and they have a great time before going back to his place to set me up asking Andy to walk us through this sex.
Yeah, you didn't ask me about the one in the bathtub, but I guess I didn't. That was just her like sponge bathing him.
I can only run this joke into the ground so many times.
Well, they never
that like therapy session. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that one was the most sensual.
Andy on sex scenes.
Yeah. This is we're just gonna have to do a supercut of all the times I forced you to talk about this.
It's been a lot. I did want to mention though, when you're talking about, you said her Jessica Rabbit outfit, it was kind of like a funny thing to have in a movie. Like you have this, I mean, she's a prostitute, you know, that's kind of cleaned up, and now she's walking out of the hotel and everybody's just like looking at her like, wow, look at that. You know, I think in real life they'd be like, she's a hooker, right? Like I don't feel like everybody be so like happy, you know, which I thought was, you know, for the movie is way better. It's a way better choice because it's a better movie to watch.
I feel like every time she walked through the lobby, everyone in the lobby every time would be like, what? And they like look like lower their, so who is that? Every single time. Yeah, she's been here for a week. Like what's the but I get the story they're trying to tell with now her big transformation here.
And the jewelry box. So we got to talk about that scene.
Oh, God, yeah.
Because I don't think that was scripted, like him closing the box on her.
You don't think so?
I don't know. Her reaction was just so hilarious.
So organic.
Maybe it wasn't. Yeah, she's just got a great laugh.
Oh,
your point. That's such a again. She's so lovable in this movie throughout the whole thing. Like that's just one of those lovable little things that maybe I don't know if it was improv or not, but it felt so very well done,
and
very
so expensive. $250,000 in 1990. What is
seriously
that? $1 billion inflation.
He was renting it.
Oh yeah, whatever.
But Natalie, this is where I start to understand why George Costanza is getting so frustrated at Richard Gere, because now that Richard Gere is seeing there's life beyond just trying to make a buck. Now he's changing. He's not working as hard. His focus is on other things. And this is where I think on Richard Gere's side, we really see that he's also starting to fall for Vivian.
He's starting to fall in love with her. He's starting to change. She's changing him. And I mean, George Costanza sucks in this though. It's like he has no leg to stand on, I think. But it's good that Richard, I think it's good that Richard Gere is finding a balance and actually becoming more of a whole person. I think ultimately it ends up being good for his business. And I think ultimately financially he will probably be better off in his life if he's like in alignment with who he really is, as opposed to like being some one-track minded, like, you know, shell of a person. But we're really getting into the like connection between them in this part of the movie and really seeing each other. I think they're both really, especially Richard Gere is like really taking her in as a full person, as opposed to a thing he can use to benefit himself. But
maybe you guys can explain the joke to me. I didn't quite get, why does she say I almost peed my pants?
It's just like she loved it so much she almost peed her pants. I feel like it's a well, yes, and it's pointing to her like lower class way of like she's still herself. Like she's still not, she's really like fits this part of like being high status and whatever. And again, I don't believe these things. I'm not like low class people, but like I think it's what the movie's saying. Right. But I think it's to show you that like even in this moment, and she's like, oh my God, crying at the opera, and she's like, I almost peed my pants. It's like she's still, you know, Vivian from the block, you know, from
you can take Vivian out of the block, but you can't take the block out of Vivian.
There you go.
What they're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
So as we kind of round out the movie here, Richard Gere says he's going to get Vivian an apartment, and Vivian doesn't think it's enough, but Gere has no time to discuss it. He's about to close the big deal. Vivian's friend shows up, and she thinks that Vivian loves Richard Gere. At the meeting, Gere wants to talk to Mr. Morris alone, and he says he doesn't want to bust up Morris's company anymore. He wants to help him. Costanza is upset and goes to visit Gere, but only gets Vivian. Costanza wants to pay for sex and things get physical before Richard Gere punches out Costanza. Gere wants Vivian to stay, but she can't. Won't you? No, I mustn't. She rides off in the limo thinking it must have been love, but it's over now. She's going back to high school, but before she can complete her education, her rich boyfriend stops her, proving his love by climbing up the tower and rescuing his princess as she meets him halfway to rescue him.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of stuff happens here at the very end, but I want to go back to the part, Natalie, and I want you to talk about this, how Gere's offering the apartment. Gere's offering to pay for things. And she's like, no. Why is she saying no to Richard Gere at this point?
I think she has had she's arced. She's had a turn. She is realizing she wants to take care of herself. She doesn't want to just be a thing someone pays for. She's not an object. She wants to be seen as a full person and valued as such. And what I think when he offers that, he's not fully arced himself yet, because he's like still thinking of her as a commodity and something that he can like own. In a way, I think he loves her, but he's got this messed up perception of of other people, and he thinks he can just like buy her and have her at her convenience, and it'll just be the same kind of relationship he's always had, but a little bit different. And she's like, no, I want better for myself. I think this whole experience has given her self-worth in a way that she's never had, and it's also expanded her mind to see like what's possible for her. So she's like, you know what? No. And I love that. I love that she does that. She says no.
And this is when oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh,
so this
okay, I'll go ahead.
I was going to say, what I love about this, by the way, this exact scene is the fact that what Richard Gere did offer, hey, I'll get you an apartment, I'll pay for stuff. Like, that is such a guy way of thinking. Like, oh, I will solve this, I will create this solution, and that means it's great. But she's seen it from no, you can't just buy this. The whole point of this is like anyone, like, my job is being bought. I want you to do something more. And so I thought that was actually a very cool thing to do, because that's exactly what a guy would do in that situation, I think. But Andy, what were you going to say?
Yeah, well, I was kind of about him. Like, I feel like for me, like I said, I thought he was like, I even wrote in my notes, I go, when does he get cool? Like, I was just like waiting for him to like kind of like get out of his shell. And like, the funny thing is, like, for me, is when he puts his feet in the grass. I was like, there you go. Like, he's finally doing something. And then for me, I was swooned by Richard Gere when he grabbed Costanza, threw him off and gave him a nice little right hook. So yeah, I feel like he finally, like, for me at least as a viewer, was kind of like, okay, I'm kind of enjoying this guy now. Now he's loosening up, putting his feet in the grass, which is so crazy. But yeah, so I was in on him, at this part now.
It was the George Costanza thing. I was actually really shocked by this and how aggressive he was. Maybe because he never fully broke away from being George Costanza in my mind, but him being a jerk to her at first and like implying like, what if I pay for it? It's like, okay, I got that. But then we started like getting really physical. I was like, whoa, I did not expect that level of aggression. And I was really glad that Richard Gere punched him out. I was kind of hoping that Vivian would have punched him out, though. I wish she got to punch him once, but I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
I think if it was made today, she would have, but I think in 1990, that's just how they rolled, I guess. But
I think they were using it as a story device or whatever as well, right? Like Richard Gere kind of realizing what he wants to defend, choosing who he wants to be, all that stuff when he punches him out. But I agree that let me just say that Pretty Woman is a problematic film in 2022. There's a lot about it, even the way that it talks about prostitution, sex work, the way it treats that stuff, I think is obviously incorrect. But in the world of the film, it's just like, I think that and I don't want to get too deep because this isn't that kind of podcast, but
Yeah.
the Costanza moment, it doesn't surprise me as a woman who has experienced aggression from men that seem like they'd be so nice.
Hmm.
Thankfully, I haven't had that exact situation happen, but I've experienced many uncomfortable things in my life that, I think a lot of guys, like, I think Jeff, for instance, my husband will often be like, especially when we first got together, he'd be like, I did not realize what it was like for women. Like, I think
Hmm.
sometimes you don't realize because you guys really don't deal with it in that way. It's unfortunately, like, I feel like a quite real depiction of a guy who feels like he's owed something and he's just, uh, yeah. But that scene is so disturbing. And I think it's so sad for her because she feels like I'm in this world. I fit here now. I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
I'm in love. Everything's good. And he's here to remind her like, no, you're not. You're still a thing. You're less than, and I can do whatever I want. And yeah, Richard Gere kind of like stepping up. I guess now that you guys are saying it so much, I am realizing I guess he is kind of like a schlub or like a piece of ooze in the movie. Like he doesn't really have much going on. And this does make him like stand up and like
Well,
do something.
I think it's kind of like she
Yeah.
talks about her fairy tale idea earlier, and she has the great line. It's something around like, "It's a fairy tale, but it never involved a condo or something like that." But I
Yes,
felt like the
yeah.
end of this movie was very fairy tale like because Richard Gere slays the dragon, which is the evil dragon, which
Yeah.
is Costanza, and then he goes and he rescues Rapunzel or whatever it is from the tower. Isn't it Rapunzel that's on the
I don't know
tower?
why
I don't know.
Rapunzel is just funny to. I don't know why
Yeah.
that.
But it was like very to me, like the whole
Rapunzel.
movie like felt like very Disney. Like it was like, she was like a little mermaid, and then he, slays this guy, and then he climbs the tower. I don't know. Is
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think it is kind of like a fairy tale for a sex worker in the 90s. Like that's
yeah,
what the story
Yeah.
that should be
is.
the tagline.
Uh, Well, but what I love, by the way, like I think it is the last line of the movie is that she says like I rescued you
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's not just she was waiting to be rescued by some rich guy. It was
yeah,
she saved him and she developed him along the way and changed who
Yes.
he was and made him happy, and made him a better person. It wasn't just some, if we're using the fairy tale analogy, it wasn't a prince just came and
right.
whisked her off her feet and carried her to Princess Land. I don't know what
Castle
you
Land.
Castle
Yeah.
Land.
It's true. Like, I think I think even though it's made in the 90s and it's got a lot of like backwards ideas in it and stuff that didn't stay super current or age well, I think her character always had a lot of agency, more than you would expect in this kind of film. And she puts up boundaries with him. She doesn't just do what he wants. And I think that's part of what like allows her to end up where she wants to be in life because she's not just like a doormat. She's like, no, I'm not gonna take your condo. This isn't my dream and I deserve my dream. And I think she co-creates this, reality that they end up in with him. I like that a lot. And I love that line that, she comes down the stairs and she's like, she rescues him, and then she rescues him back or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it does give her more agency than you would think in a movie in this time and whatever. But I do love that they added that. I do think that's important.
So
Mhm.
as we wrap up, my going through this, I made a few jokes throughout, but honestly, this was a very fun, easy watch. It was just under 2 hours, I think. And anyone who watches the show knows that once you get to the 2 hour mark, it's gotta be a good movie. I start to get a little impatient. But
Yeah.
I didn't feel like this was a 2 hour movie. It was very easy. It was very fun to watch. Um and as I'm saying it, I got to apologize to Richard Gere a little bit here because now that I'm realizing, I think if you had someone who had a ton of character, like if the character had a lot of personality, if you had like Ryan Reynolds playing this role, it would have taken away a little bit, I think, from the character Julia Roberts was playing, who was
Mhm.
supposed to stand out. So I think kind of, for lack of a better term, graying everyone else out so that she could be more colorful is actually kind of the right thing to do in a movie like this. So
Exactly. Yeah, I think
uh,
so.
Yeah, so I thought it was a great movie. I actually had a great time watching. I thought it was a fun watch. But Andy and Natalie, you get the last word because you are the guest. But Andy, any final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, and I agree with you. You know, I think it's similar to if you remember the movie Rain Man, Tom Cruise is actually great in that, but it's Dustin Hoffman that you really, you know, he goes and does his thing. I felt like it was like this too, because Julie Roberts was nominated for an Oscar for this, and he definitely deserved it. And yeah, he kind of took like almost like a little, you know, lack of a better word, a boring stance, you know, compared to what she was doing. But yeah, I hadn't seen it in a long time, and just shows Julie Roberts is America's sweetheart. And I don't think there's too many actresses that can pull off being such a likable prostitute.
Well, Natalie, so as we wrap up the movie, any kind of final thoughts or things you'd like to add about the movie? Anything we skipped or you want to go back to, or just in general, how you feel about the movie? You looking back on it now?
Yeah, I love this movie. I grew up on this movie. It's it formed a lot of my opinions on being a woman incorrectly, and now watching it again, I I really enjoyed watching it. Yeah, with the filmmaker hat on, and absolutely loved Julia Roberts' performance. She's so talented. She's so good. She's so grounded and real, and like she really experiences everything. Like she really is. She is really having those experiences on screen, which obviously is the goal. I I think yeah, I think Pretty Woman's a great movie, and despite certain things that might not have aged well and will probably continue to not age well, I think its overall like message kind of still works, and I I love it. I mean, I love rewatching it. I rewatch it regularly. I recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it. And
And
yeah,
great soundtrack.
great soundtrack. I was just thinking that, yeah.
Just some
Like I
great.
love how you reference those in your summaries. And use because they are kind of story points. Like they're kind
Yeah.
of like on the nose playing like must have been
I
love.
I
But it's over now.
I always think of King of Wishful Thinking. I don't know. It's always Pretty Woman and Prince Kiss.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and then the song Pretty Woman, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously.
The
Oh yeah, and
best.
that one.
Yeah, this
That
was a
one
great
song.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
There's tons of great ones in there.
Yeah.
Now, as we get to the final parts of the show, Natalie, we always like to play a little game, and it's Andy. It's basically Andy plays the game. I test him. I see if he can connect someone from this movie to a movie that Kevin Bacon was in 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, I believe the name of the game we ripped off for this show.
Yeah.
Andy, can you do it? I
Oh,
know
yeah.
you can.
Yeah. Julia Roberts, Ocean's 11, Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt was in Sleepers with Kevin Bacon.
You know, you went the sleepers route. I feel like what wasn't Kevin Bacon and Julia Roberts in a movie together? I feel like they had
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. I could
You
have
just wanted
done
to.
that.
You just wanted to be. What was
Actually,
that
I don't know
movie?
if were they in a movie together? They may have. I just went that route. I was thinking he was in Flatliners, but that's Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
In any
Which
case,
is a really crazy movie. Have you
Was
seen
Julia
Flatliners?
Roberts in Flatliners?
It's yeah. Have you seen
No,
that
I
movie?
didn't.
It's
No.
crazy. It's like they're like med students that like
kill
make each other
themselves, right?
die. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
they're dead, and then they see what happens, and while they're dead, and then they bring them back to life. As a kid, I watched that like way too young.
Wait, that's an older movie? How old is that movie?
I want to say it was like right after this. I think it was like 91 or something.
Yeah.
Wait, what? Wait,
Yeah.
was there a new one with Ellen Page?
Yeah, they did a new one. Yeah,
Yeah.
they did a new. I didn't see the new one,
Or
but
not
the
Ellen
old one.
Page.
Well,
Next year we'll watch it.
Yeah, next season we'll have to come back and watch it, and we'll have to have you on, Natalie. Next, but for this
For
show,
Flatliners.
Flatliners. But next time, as far as the shows go, that does it for 1990. Next time we go to 1991, and we are reviewing the blockbuster Terminator 2 with Evan T. Mack, and then we go to 1992 after that for Army of Darkness with John Koval. And then in 1993, we've got Jurassic Park with Danielle Delaco.
Yeah, it's Natalie's BFF.
My girl.
I was like, I should have practiced this
Yeah,
before.
that was
That's
great.
part of the show. Danielle Delaco, Jurassic Park. That's going to be a fun one as well. That does it for us. I'm Jack Farmer. You can find me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. Andy, where can the world find you and what you're working on?
You can find me at Just Andy Rossi or at Dead Body Movie.
And Natalie, where can the world find you and all the projects you've got going on?
You can find me at Natalie Canizares.
And that does it for us. We will see you guys next year.